parce qu'il faut remonter à l'an 1000.
So who is Omar Bongo? He was a Gabonese politician who was the second president of Gabon for 42 years, from 1967 until his death in 2009. His legacy is that of a dynasty rule in the country. He became immensely wealthy in office while serving as France's point man in the region. He is a disciple of the first generation of African leaders. Omar Bongo came to power in 1967. When Lyndon B. Johnson was still the President of the United States. He presided over an oil boom that fueled an extravagant lifestyle for him and his family. During his leadership, Gabon used to supply over 2 billion barrels of oil to France. He owned dozens of luxurious properties in and around Paris, 70 bank accounts in fresh banks, lived in a $500 million presidential palace with his fancy cars, and had sprawling estates across France. At least 39 properties and owned at least 9 luxury vehicles worth $2 million. But the tide of money did little to lift his country of 1.5 million people out of chronic poverty. Basically, the Bongo family became major French property owners while his country remained poverty-stricken. So what were the main factors behind his rise to wealth and power? 2 factors: oil and France. This is the sphere of France's influence on Africa. The French colonies in the continent and Gabon was the jackpot in a largely deserted and poor neighborhood. An oil-rich nation, most countries in West Africa have experienced lengthy civil wars or successive military coups right after gaining independence. Yet Omar Bongo, who came to power in 1967, ruled largely unchallenged without much force, despite squandering much of the country's natural wealth and leaving it facing a deeply uncertain economic future. Bongo's rule is a masterclass in the use of patronage. His ascent to the presidency coincided with the country's rise to being Africa's 3rd biggest oil producer, and Bongo quickly realized that money could be more effective than bullets when it comes to retaining power. He turned his relationship with France into a symbiotic relationship, supplied them with resources, oil, of course, in return for political influence, money and power. Gabon had 1/5 of the world's known uranium, which was sent to France to make nuclear bombs, and the then French president tested them in the Algerian deserts. Apart from the oil, France received iron, manganese deposits and timber. And what did Gabon get in return? Money. Low-interest trade loans, salaries for advisors and teachers, scholarships for 800 students per year, all of this on paper. Gabon was always important to France. Bongo has reportedly been saying that Gabon without France is like a car with no driver. France without Gabon is like a car with no fuel. He even helped bankroll the 1981 presidential campaign of the leader and numerous other French electoral campaigns, both right and left. There is an established financial network between both the nations for decades. Apart from money, France also helped Bongo stay in power. When there was a civil war in 1993, Paris hosted talks between Bongo and the opposition, resulting in the Paris Accords, which restored power in Bongo's hands. Like other absolute leaders and rulers in the continent, Omar Bongo curtailed dissent, opposition and the press. He would buy off the opponents rather than crush them outright. His authoritarian rule was softened by the money from offshore oil fields. For France, this attitude made him a more respectable ally than others in the region. France maintains a military base in the capital and has extensive oil interests in the country and long viewed Bongo as a special partner. 50 years on, Gabon has fewer miles of paved road than it has of oil pipelines, and the theft of billions of dollars of oil money has stalled the country's development. Plus, The oil, which still provides the vast bulk of government revenue, is fast running out. Despite the rich soil and tropical climate, there is only a tiny amount of agricultural production. And now Omar's son, Ali Bongo, is the president of the country. Apart from power, Ali Bongo seems to have also inherited the skills to acquire money and live luxuriously. Now, the relationship between France and Gabon has been injured and has faced multiple challenges. The French public interest groups have filed legal complaints accusing Bongo of misuse of public funds over their sumptuous property holdings in France. This lawsuit, filed by Gabon's closest ally and long-term financial partner, has exposed Bongo family of scrutiny and investigations. During the final hours of Omar Bongo, the longtime French ally chose a hospital in Spain instead of Paris, especially after the investigating magistrate in Paris ordered a go-ahead on the legal cases filed against the Bongo family in the late 2000s. The Bongo family has been accused of turning the country into a kleptocratic regime, looting its natural resources, oil wealth and rainforests, while members of the country's political opposition have long accused the family members of embezzling public money and running the country as their private property. In 2017, French police dropped the case against the Bongo family, which revealed assets including 39 properties in France and 9 luxury cars. The French news agency reported there had been insufficient evidence when it comes to the alleged ill-gotten gains to charge any of the family members. And Omar Bongo announced that he is donating his wealth to charity. And now the charges are back on the front pages to haunt the children. The allegations include concealing embezzlement of public funds, corruption, and misuse of company assets. Investigators believe members of the dynasty, including Omar, his son Ali, who is now the president of the country, and his daughter Pascaline, all of them reportedly benefited from a fraudulently acquired real estate empire worth at least 85 million euros. All 4 of the accused children have once again denied any knowledge of the allegedly fraudulent origins of the assets. It's a part of a 15-year-old probe into ill-gotten gains originating from its former African colonies. Further 14 people are under an investigation, including relatives of the president of Congo. So how did all of this begin? One of France's leading banks, BNP Paribas, according to the investigations, the bank failed in its due diligence obligations by not reporting to the authorities about a suspicious bank account. It belonged to the Bongo family, which used these accounts to embezzle tens of millions of euros to acquire real estate in France. We still do not know about the clear figures of his net worth. The scale of his plundered riches started to emerge only after a court case in France. Prior to the current suit, the U.S. Senate probe into private banking operations at Citibank estimated that Omar Bongo has held $130 million in personal accounts. The investigator concluded that there could be no doubt that these financial assets were sourced in the public finances of the country. It's been reported that Omar Bongo had more than 30 children with his wives and other women, but his primary family looks like this. Bongo's first marriage was to Louis Mukala. They had a daughter, Pascaline, who later became the foreign minister and subsequently the director of the presidential cabinet. Bongo's second marriage was to Josephine Bongo. They had a son, Ali Bongo, the now president of Bongo. Bongo then married Edith Lucy. She was the daughter of the Congolese president, and she bore Bongo 2 children. Now, this is important because his children are in trouble, and some of them are battling with each other over property. His daughter has been siphoning money from her dad's estate, blowing the cash on jewelry, luxury vacations, private jets. All of this as per a new $50 million lawsuit. His eldest daughter, Pascaline, had allegedly drafted a document making herself the executor without consent from her father or the other heirs. Pascaline has refused to show the full will to the family and has told them the value of the estate is only $50 million instead of the true amount, which is hundreds of millions. Instead of accounting for the estate and distributing the assets, Pascaline used the money to fund her extravagant lifestyle. Meanwhile, Pascaline's siblings have rallied against her for money laundering and abuse. Yamali Bongo Astier and Sasha Bongo Astier are Pascaline's sister and nieces who live in New York. They are demanding at least $50 million in lost inheritance. The mother-daughter duo claim that Pascaline has refused to show the full extent of Omar's will and that she intentionally transferred the assets to herself, 4 others and 2 companies who are all listed as defendants in the case. Pascaline has been dismissing stories about her father's wealth as fantasies and claimed that he had given much of it away before his death. Since the president's heart attack in June 2000, legal battles have regularly flared up over his inheritance, and things are only getting uglier. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.